Hi there, Casey Healey, Director here at Century 21 Novi Casturn, back in the office with Nick from Inovayt Finance. Thanks for coming in, Nick.
Thanks for having me, Casey.
Back with our monthly video, keeping investors up to date on what's happening in that finance space. So, Nick, how's the state of play?
Yeah, look, the interest rate market's probably the thing that's been talked about the most outside of what's going on in the property world. So fixed rates have continued to go up. We've probably seen some of the major lenders increase 2, 3, 4, 5 year fixed rates 2 and 3 times in the last 4 weeks.
That's massive.
Which is quite aggressive in terms of what's obviously going on behind the scenes. That is changing things because I guess it sets the perception that money isn't going to be this cheap forever.
Yeah, it's been this cheap for a long time, so.
Oh, well, yeah, we're probably very lucky as to how long we got of cheap money and how many people access cheap money during that period, particularly on their owner-occupied stuff and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely been a good portion of the market that have made the most of it.
Yep.
And we've obviously seen the results of that with the property market.
What are we seeing in relation to investors? Are you seeing much investor finance at this stage? Is anyone?
It's been really wavy, and I guess that has to do with a couple of things. Obviously, asset prices are rising.
As high as they're probably.
It's incredibly competitive, and I think there's a lot more emotion in the process for an owner-occupier, obviously, than an investor. So when those little battles get happening at auctions
and it comes down to those numbers, like investors just tap away because it's a business. And
exactly.
It's got to stack up in those numbers.
But I really do think that we are starting to see a lift in listings.
Yes.
So hopefully that means that investors have more of a chance to make good buys, because obviously one of the biggest things we're talking about at the moment is housing availability.
Yep.
That's a good word, that one. And I mean, you guys see it day in, day out in terms of what's available.
Definitely, and you see that through tenants applying for properties, how many applications you're actually having per property. And then just over the last month, we leased 15% of the properties were leased over the asking price. So there's a battle for tenants. Not even just purchasers trying to purchase a property. So, and with investors not actively or not really actively in the market because it just doesn't stack up at this stage, you're going to have more and more push on rents and more problems with that availability of housing.
Absolutely, and I think, look, obviously another big thing we're thinking about at the moment is that there is an election coming within 6 months now, which is scary. So what happens in the next 6 months? Because obviously 2 key things that governments, people, media talk about, and they're similar but they're not the same, is housing affordability and housing availability. Housing affordability has more to do, with people buying their homes, borrowing capacity, all that sort of stuff. Housing availability is that, plus those that rent. And that's probably more of a key issue in reality than housing affordability, because having roofs overhead is much more important. So as we said, election coming up, we've got this known housing availability issue. Yep. I mean, we can all only hope that as a part of the election campaigns that both sides potentially have something in there for us in terms of helping investors get into the market. Like we've seen over probably the last 2 elections that the predominant support has been for first home buyers and home buyers in general, which has been awesome. But maybe it is time to help with that problem.
The availability issues that would be, you would think or hope, more of a concern rather than affordability as such.
Exactly, because I guess at the end of the day, not everyone can afford to buy a house, and not everyone wants to buy a house in some circumstances. Some people travel around a lot, so having property to rent or short-term lease, whatever it may be, is important.
Definitely.
And that's that's probably the biggest squeeze we've seen in the last 18 months, more so than the availability to buy property. Is to rent.
Affordability.
Yeah.
So that's our wrap for this month. If you have any questions in relation to your current property, looking to refinance, if you want to tap into some equity you've got in that property, you're never going to get a better valuation to be able to do that. Reach out to Nick, reach out to myself. We can have a chat and work with you along your financial goals to secure financial freedom through property. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.